In today's episode, we'll be checking out Wolfsbane, Say My Name. This film was directed and written by John Guerra Jr. Wolfsbane, or Wolfsbane Say My Name, is an example that falls short of how to turn a comic book character into a feature film. Although we won't use direct comparisons to the comic book in this review, the movie still feels poorly executed, like the work of an amateur film student. Let's dive in and see where this comic book movie went wrong and provide some helpful feedback. Wolfsbane is about a man who lost his wife during a surgery gone bad. In his rage, he drove to a local farm area to hunt. While out there, he's given superpowers by aliens. He sort of explains what his powers are and how the three chose him to be a god to kill the demons and angels that have done wrong. Was it his grief that caused the three to grant him his superpowers? Were they just fans of war hunters? There's nothing wrong with mystery, but because it feels so arbitrary in this case, and his powers are so overwhelmingly, powerful, some more sensible explanation as to why he was chosen would have helped sell that better. You get a first look at one of Wolfsbane's powers, which is teleportation, during an overly long walk sequence. Then you see a businessman hatching a plan to take over the city. In the following scene, the businessman meets up with the mayor of the city, which prompts some awkward dialogue. We're left guessing as to their backstory. Unfortunately, you could hear dialogue from the other actors' microphones. Make sure when you're mixing to pull those down. I tend to prefer avoiding ADR whenever possible, as it can suck the sense of place out of the scene or sound too artificial. However, sometimes it can be a good call. Unfortunately, there are pervasive audio issues. There are poor audio cuts where you can hear the background noise abruptly end when the audio clip is done. The levels also jump around a lot. Even if your source audio is poor, you can still do things to compensate. Add a constant background noise that isn't distracting, but that will help mask the background noise in your dialogue. And just one more thing about the sound effects. A lot of them were repeated too many times with just the same sound effect, which really makes the sound effects stick out. It's best to have a few variations at the very least so you can swap them in and out to help sell a change in the physical action on screen. Close to an hour into the movie, the plot doesn't seem to have changed much, and bad guys keep on killing each other for reasons. Wolfsbane himself rarely comes out, and we're not always sure why he decides to show up on some occasions and not others. There really isn't much for character development, which is necessary to help us feel invested. The bad guys in this film were generally bland and one-dimensional, and didn't feel like a major threat that needed to be stopped. It often felt like a bunch of B-roll showcasing a man who cosplays while bad guys smack each other around. A more developed script should be the main focus next time when making a superhero movie adaptation. Superheroes need to have challenges to overcome to stay interesting. And some scenes are clearly promoting bottles of virus vodka, which can end up distracting from the scene. Keep these promos subtler. On a positive note, they did pick a good font for displaying scene information. It was easy to read, made sense with the movie, and added some character. One pet peeve though, never title scenes in a movie as present day or now. The day that scene was shot, it already isn't. Most characters in this film just felt like they existed to read lines, but didn't do much to contribute to or improve the story. It's best to really develop a character before writing a final script. If characters don't feel real, then stories don't feel as compelling. There was a character that wandered around with a sheathed blade that kept trying to pull off a Cockney accent, which didn't work. But the character was actually somewhat enjoyable, and would have been better served by avoiding the accent. And while it wasn't 100% convincing, the Wolfsbane costume actually looked pretty good, especially considering that the actor is a larger man, which can make it hard to pull off. However, the character Wolfsbane seems to be essentially unkillable. That unfortunately makes things less interesting, as the character never seems to be in any danger, so it's hard to build up tension. Perhaps in future movies, vulnerabilities will be introduced that will help inject some tension. The cinematography was not cohesive. Many shots suffered from what appeared to be unintentional shakiness, and when the camera panned, it had a clunky feel to it. The cinematography should have been more focused when it came to recording the scenes. A few scenes felt like the camera person wandered around at a truck show and inserted the footage into the movie. Still, there were some interesting shots. One of the earlier scenes has a character waiting in a truck, and interesting lighting colors helped bring out an effective mood. One of the best shot scenes was of a band's performance somewhere in the middle of the movie. However, it felt out of place as essentially the full song performance was shown without an apparent plot-driving reason. There were transitions mid-dialogue, which gave the impression that actors hadn't been able to make it through their full lines, and instead of shooting another complete take, just cut the lines together. The VFX was choppy as well in most of the scenes. The VFX issues drew attention away from the action because it was noticeably fake and wasn't always motion tracked correctly, so there's a little bit of weird floatiness going on. Many scenes felt too long or didn't seem to move the plot along. Sometimes it's better to cut a movie way down and focus on just a few scenes. Especially when you're just starting out in the movie making scene. Making a short can be a much more effective way to tell your story, as you can really concentrate your resources while you figure out your dynamic workflow. Wolfsbane really falls flat on its feet and really needed some more work put into it. While it does feel like a sincere attempt, it also felt very much like a crew working on their first set, still figuring things out. Shooting movies on a low budget, it's tough. Many times you're depending on volunteers who have their own time commitments. But in these types of situations, it's really best to distill something to its very essence, make something short and outstanding, and gradually build up to longer films. Wolfsbane unfortunately bit off more than it could chew. We give Wolfsbane a 0.5 out of 5. Don't forget to check out our other budget indie film review episode on Lowriders vs. Zombies from Space and subscribe for more reviews.